Oh,吓死我了. That was scary, guys. I'm scared. Hello, YouTube. Welcome back to another EFANG review. Today, we have the SIMGOT EA500. So this was an IEM sent to me by Linsol. Before I got this, I had no idea what SIMGOT was. I've never heard of them, and I had no idea what to expect. Once it was shipped to me, I still had no idea what it was. Because looking at it from the front, you can't even tell this is an IEM. The only thing that gives it away is that there is a high-res audio sticker up here. But aside from this, like if I just cover that up and I look at this, I walk into a store and I see this on the shelf, I'd be like, what the hell is that? Like, I can't tell what it is. I just have no idea. I just don't know. You can tell me that this was related to any sort of tech out there, whether it's like cameras, microphones, keyboards, like whatever, and I would have believed you because I just can't tell that it's an IEM. The only other way you could have told was, well, there's some frequency response graphs out the back there, and there's a little picture that you can't really see on the side, but if I just looked at it from the front, I'm like, what is this? I just didn't know. The quick summary of this is that the resolution is insane for the price, the sound is amazing, I can very much enjoy this. It brings a nice little change to what I'm used to. It lacks a bit of sub bass, but mid bass is good, and I can definitely recommend this. Might have too much treble for certain genres like electronics with high pitch, but we can talk about all that stuff later. So move on to details, unboxing, and build quality. These cost 75 US dollars on Linsol, which is approximately 120 Australian dollars. Now it has a 10mm dynamic driver, and they also market it as a thing called dual magnetic circuit and dual cavity. So lots of fancy names and words being thrown around there, but all you gotta know, it is a 10mm dynamic driver. Now, as you can see, there is a very nice unboxing experience. It slides right out, another box here. It's got a quote on the front from someone. I'm not sure who this guy is, I better go research him. Flip open the cover and you get greeted with the IEMs right there. Taking this out, on the inside there is an accessories box here, and the air tips are inside of this front box. So pulling everything open, as you can see, they come with a little carrying pouch here, and it has a bit more accessories on the inside, including the cable, as well as a lot of cards and manuals and things that they always usually include. But nonetheless, this cardboard box and black packaging is really, really premium looking. It's aesthetic, and I really like it. I'm a big fan. So I actually haven't tried their air tips, but from what I can see and feel and touch, they seem pretty quality. There is 3 sizes. The cable is okay, nothing too special. You can't really expect a good cable to come with an 80 USD IEM. That just doesn't really happen. So the IEMs themselves have a really nice stainless steel faceplate. The whole thing is really stainless steel, but you do have to note that because it is stainless steel, it is a bit of a fingerprint magnet, and you will be wanting to wipe this every once in a while. Build quality, aesthetic is really nice. These fit surprisingly small, so they went into my ears quite a bit. I think this will fit you guys out there, on the average person or the smaller ears will be just fine with these. They're not a huge IEM like the Blessing to Dusk. And also a very unique feature it has is that you can switch the nozzle out for 2 different types of tuning, which we'll talk about in a bit. But all that is that you can unscrew the nozzle and switch that around. So we'll go straight into more about this nozzle talk. Now, they have 2 nozzles here. The stock nozzles that comes with is the Harman tuned one, and then they also have another one that you can put in that is what they call the SIMGOT Classic tuning. So all it does is that it slightly changes the frequency response and how the IEM would sound. I did most of my listening using the Harman. I do prefer the Harman over the SIMGOT Classic. Now the difference is, I'll put the graph on the screen, but the Harman tuning has a bit more bass and lower presence and slightly less upper regions. The SIMGOT Classic is less bass and more upper regions. There is quite a significant noticeable change because they're not changing just one region, it's changing 2 regions at once. It's bringing one end up and raising the other. And so the SIMGOT Classic tuning had quite a bit of upper and relatively less bass. The Harman had a bit more bass and less upper. Now this IEM is already upper boosted enough for you to not need to boost any more uppers, so I do recommend just staying with the Harman. I think you have to be listening to very specific tracks or certain genres to enjoy the SIMGOT Classic tuning. All it is you just unscrew the nozzle, right, like this. As you can see on the screen, you just unscrew the nozzle and you can screw the other one back in. Remember, the red is Harman and the black is SIMGOT Classic. They have a little ring just to make sure you can remember which is which. The rings do come off, but thankfully they have included quite a few spare rings in case you lose your one, so you can always remember what tuning you have. Don't go around and unscrewing and screwing them on too often, because like with anything that has screws, they will wear out if you keep screwing and unscrewing them. Moving on to the frequency response, we'll talk about as we always do. these IEMs have some pretty juicy mid-bass. I quite like my mid-bass, I also quite like my sub-bass. I am a bit of a bass head and I approve of this, so that gets my endorsement, which should speak for itself at this point. Now, it does lack a little bit of sub-bass extension, but all around the bass is very good. I approve of this, very enjoyable, and I'm not going to talk much more about it. Jumping straight to the mids. The mids are also very well tuned. They're a bit warmer on the lower mids, giving it that lush and full experience. It's the kind of feeling that I personally prefer when it comes to my mids. Upper mids have slight recession, only when you specifically look for it. It's not as noticeable because there is a treble boost, which gives it that little clarity that feels like it's in your face kind of thing. But when you listen to certain vocal tracks and you're just listening specifically to certain voices or things like that, you can kind of notice that it's not as close to you as you would like. It's kind of like a feeling where I feel like instruments are closer to me or in front of the performer rather than the performer being in front of instruments. There's also times where it just feels like they're all on the same straight line, so they're all coming at me from the same distance. Now that's because of that upper mid recession, whereas certain instruments rely more on that treble boost, which brings that forward. If you just don't specifically listen for that upper mid recession, you won't actually notice it. Instrumentals go nuts, right? Just actual instruments like pianos or guitars. Now moving on to treble, as you guys will see on the graph, there is a treble boost that immediately stands out. Gives it a really high sense of resolution and detail, which is also true because IEM does resolve really well regardless. Surprisingly, it was not as fatiguing as I thought it would be. Because when I first saw the frequency response graph, I'm like, oh, what is this treble boost? This thing must be fatiguing. When I listened, I was like, you know what? The fatigue isn't as bad as I thought it would be. I think this is because the upper boost isn't really peaky, as in there's not a lot of boost in just one area of a frequency, and it's just overall roughly boosted. The only peaky part is in the 8,000 to 10,000 hertz region, and that part isn't really associated with being too fatiguing anymore. So the overall boosted region also means that you aren't turning your volume up as much to hear certain details, therefore you don't enter that fatiguing range. Because what happens is when you have one frequency be really boosted, you turn the volume up to hear the majority of the frequencies, but then as a result, that one frequency range is being significantly higher than all the other ones, and therefore that's what usually causes fatigue. So in this case, even though it's got treble boost, the whole region is boosted, and so you don't actually get peaky treble, which makes it sound very fatiguing. Obviously, if you had the whole region elevated too much, that's where it starts sounding thin and just treble. So the lack of peaks is a good thing here. The 8 to 10,000 hertz range is there, but it doesn't really reflect aside from certain genres. So that leads me straight to genres. This is an IEM that is great for all-around use. It's insanely amazing for anything mids focused, especially ones that utilize actual instruments and vocals. Only certain high-pitched metallic or electronic tracks could be a bit sharp. Now, metalheads might dig this instead. They like that, so this could be you. Or certain electronic songs are really nice with their sharp attacks. There's a very fine line between that metal or that electronic being enjoyable versus it being way too ear-piercing, hard, sharp treble. So an example I can think of is YOASOBI and certain anime music have very good electronic sounds that benefit from that sharp attack. I also listen to a lot of future bass or melodic dubstep, and those have parts where it becomes ear-piercing instead. So the anime music, the electronic music from YOASOBI and stuff, those are the kinds of good sharps that I want. The melodic dubstep, the future bass, those are the ones where it does make me bleed. So when it comes to technicalities and gaming performance, the resolution is the first thing I'm going to talk about. And it's absolutely nuts, right? It's the most amazing feature of this IEM. It's amazing that it's coming from something that's only $80 US. Like, it's the biggest standout feature for this IEM that instantly made me go, wow. I tried these and I'm like, wow, like, what is this detail? What is this clarity? What is this resolution? I could not believe that this was from an $80 US IEM. Separation is nuts too, which directly ties in with resolution. Not much more to say. Soundstaging is relatively wide for an IEM. There are definitely narrower IEMs, but this is still a generic IEM experience. It's not the biggest standout feature, but it's also very enjoyable and there's nothing to complain here. There's nothing lacking. Dynamics is nothing too special. Generic IEM experience. I think this is the weakest part of the technicalities that I do talk about. Usually a large part of dynamics comes from having well-separated bass to kick into effect when the song hits a chorus and there's a beat drop. However, given that this has an upper range boost already, it sometimes reduces that impact the bass has when it kicks in, so it makes the bass feel relatively a bit quieter, which therefore reduces that kind of impact. Nonetheless, it's not like there's no dynamics, it's just an all-round enjoyable presentation. Finally, coming to positional audio and gaming performance, the positional audio was absolutely insane, gaming experience was perfect, gets a top tier recommendation, top tier experience, and if you're honestly looking for an IEM just to play games on, just to locate enemies, it doesn't get much better than this. Gaming audio engines themselves generally suck. There's a limit to how much better audio in terms of positioning can you get from buying better gear when you're capped by the audio engines in the video games. And honestly, at these days, like $80 IEMs, $100 IEMs are all pretty much as good as you'll ever need them to be. Right, if you're just after something for gaming, you don't need to buy much better. If you people are spending $500 on IEMs, that should be for music, not gaming. Same thing could be said about headphones or anything audio related, because for gaming, you really don't need a lot. This is all you need. So the conclusion is, it's an insane value IEM, gets my top tier recommendation. The only thing to note is that upper region sensitivity, so I probably wouldn't use this IEM for the most extended period of time on a daily basis. The upper boost is something that I am a bit more sensitive towards, but it's also a very nice, satisfying change to what I'm used to listening to, because I've been missing this kind of boosted upper region, the sharp attacks. That was there without sacrificing the all-round overall tuning that I generally enjoyed. I can see myself listening to these for a short time every once in a while just to enjoy them, and I think for the average listener, this is pretty much all you'll ever need to buy as well. Yeah, I hope you guys get to try one of these. Link is in the description, has my Linsol referral link to it, just so you guys know. While I do sound like I'm shilling things here, all I can say is I'm genuinely impressed. Once again, thanks to Linsol for sending these through, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.